Cavite 4th District Representative Kiko Barzaga's second suspension is set to end a few weeks from now. Is he ready to make a comeback at the House of Representatives? Good morning. I'm Atty. Jimeno, and this is At the Forefront. He was suspended twice at the House of Representatives. The first time was due to his offensive and malicious social media posts. A few days after the suspension ended, Cavite 4th District Representative Kiko Barzaga was suspended again, this time for alleging that ultra-billionario Enrique Razon bribed National Unity Party members to support Martin Romualdez' re-election bid as House Speaker. Will he finally return to the lower chamber, or will he be sanctioned again? We'll get the answer from the man himself and also get his thoughts on other political issues. Joining us today is Congressman Kiko Barzaga. Good morning, Congressman Kiko.
Good morning.
Okay, so yung may meow talaga.
Yes, yung trademark ko na yan. Kaya ako mag-meow-meow every time.
Oo, dapat may translator tayo kung anong ibig sabihin ng mga meow-meow, no? So let's start. You were suspended in December 2025 for 60 days. Nung babalik ka na, that was another 60 days suspension. Are you confident that you can finally return to the House of Representatives this coming April? O meron bang risks na meron na namang magsususpend sa'yo?
Well, this April, the House is still on break, so the earliest possible time would be the first week of May. And we'll still see. There's plenty of things developing, especially with the war and the economic crisis going on. So there are multiple things that they have to balance within the House, and we will see how much they will prioritize my future suspension.
In the past, you have implied that your suspension is linked to your criticisms of the administration of President Bongbong Marcos. Do you still believe that?
Well, it's not just whether or not I believe it. It's actually something that's true. Because we've seen other congressmen, even recently, do far worse things than me that do not face any problems within the Ethics Committee. I mean, just around 2 months ago, we've seen the video of Congressman Richard Gomez when he assaulted a senior citizen in the 2025 SEA Games.
And you believe...
Yeah, there are no complaints regarding that.
Oo, wala bang naging penalty yun?
No, there was no penalty.
Okay, baka naman merong parating or wala talaga?
No. Because my case took about a month or so, and it's been over 2 months for his.
Should you face another suspension, are you exploring legal remedies in order to get back to Congress?
Well, that's a secret. I might be exploring legal remedies now, but it's better for me not to reveal everything yet.
Under our Constitution, there are also penalties like expulsion from the House of Representatives. Do you fear that there's a possibility that you may be expelled from the 20th Congress if they reach like a 2/3 vote?
Well, that is a possibility, but at the same time, what do you fear more? The possibility of being expelled or the possibility of allowing the corruption to continue? Because right now, we are seeing the effects of the government's corruption at play here. And we can already see the negative effects it has on our economy. Back then, last year in 2025, we already have massive economic problems due to the decrease in foreign direct investments, the massive protests, decreasing people's trust in our government, and now it is also happening at the same time as a geopolitical crisis where there is a war that is cutting out the fuel supply from the Middle East. And even during times of peace, we already had an unstable economy. Further, it's much worse now. And being silent, in spite of all of that, is much worse than being expelled.
So you don't mind all these sanctions in spite of the fact that you might be facing further sanctions? You'll continue to speak out against the administration?
Because if you don't speak out, then who will? The people voted for me and the people supported me because they knew that I would be given the voice to represent them in speaking out against the corruption, speaking out against the economic policies that's causing them to be unable to handle the increasing prices of fuel and basic commodities.
I've seen some of your vlogs and sometimes nandun ka sa floor and you still vlog at parang yung ibang mga colleagues mo sa House of Representatives parang nasistress pag vlog mo sila or sinasama mo sa vlog. When you get back to Congress after your suspension, do you plan to continue vlogging or is there anything that you will do differently?
Well, maybe. We'll see. We don't know yet. Maybe by May, Congress would have changed. Maybe there's a change in leadership that's more favorable to me. Maybe we'll be in World War III. Maybe that's a definite possibility because there are already reports of Russia helping Iran and China starting to encircle Taiwan. So there's a possibility that we might be in a state of war by May. There's many ways that this situation could develop, and there are many possibilities that could happen that would make me unable to accurately comment on that.
Okay. And meron ding mga nag-file ng cyberlibel complaints against you after you said that businessman Enrique Razon bribed other members of the House of Representatives to re-elect or to support former Speaker Martin Romualdez in his speakership. What are the status of those complaints?
Well, I haven't seen yet. We already filed our counter affidavits regarding those. And it's a very surprising thing because if it actually goes to court, then that would lead to trial, and I already have the evidence either way. So we'll see what happens.
So wala pang resolution sa Office of the Prosecutor. Have
But
you
we already-
spoken?
We've already prepared legal plans. Actually, plenty of lawyers expressed their support to me to actually do it free of charge so I can save up some legal fees because some of the congressmen also made some enemies with the legal system there. Some people have personal conflicts against Mr. Razon. So we'll see.
May mga tumutulong sa'yo. So hindi ka naman bugbog when it comes to patong-patong na legal fees.
No, because also regarding the cyber libel cases, it's very hard to prove and it's a long process, and eventually I'll have more and more allies along the way.
And you previously issued a public apology to billionaire Enrique Razon. Have you been able to speak to him personally?
No, I haven't been speaking to him. I believe the first time we'll be speaking is through court mediation. But yes, that was in regard of a separate matter. I still fully expect the case to go through, and because when you're a billionaire, you can't just allow these things to slide. You have to keep pushing for these cases. You can't just file a case and then retract it. So at the same time, we have to consider those truths of the matter, that whatever our personal beliefs is or whatever the situation is, that or whatever our however we like this situation to go, the reality is that it has already started. And whether or not this has come from a legitimate concern or a legitimate issue or from a misunderstanding, that the case has already been filed and we will inevitably have to face each other in court. So that's what we're preparing for.
And from your end, do you stand by the sources that made you say that publicly in terms of the allegation ng bribery from Enrique Razon to other members of the House of Representatives?
Well, it's only if necessary. If I have to prove it in court in order to defend myself, then I am willing to do so.
Okay. Will you also apologize to the National Unity Party? You ended up leaving your party and becoming independent.
No, it all started with Kong Puno, so I'm not apologizing to him.
Okay. In November 2025, the CIDG also filed complaints of inciting to sedition and inciting to rebellion against you that stemmed from events that happened during the September rallies last year. What are the status of those complaints?
I believe those were dismissed already.
Okay,
Sedition is
so na-dismiss na.
it's a very serious case and one that's very hard to prove.
Okay, so you don't regret, the events that happened back in September?
I mean, if I would regret, they would have not done it in the first place. I'm more surprised at the other congressmen not regretting that they chose to be silent in the face of one of the greatest corruption issues in our nation's history.
Back in 2025, there were reports that you intended to replace Martin Romualdez as Speaker. Was that true? And totoo rin ba yung sinabi ni Deputy Speaker Janet Garin that you have your own independent group called the Meow Block? But before I answer this question, we'll have to take a short break. At the forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the Forefront. We continue our conversation with Cavite 4th District Representative Kiko Barzaga. Congressman Kiko, back in 2025, there were reports that you wanted to replace Martin Romualdez as Speaker. At sabi rin ni Deputy Speaker Janet Garin that you have your own independent group called the Meow Block. Are these true?
Well, firstly, everyone wants to replace the Speaker. That's why he was removed. But yeah, everyone wants to be Speaker as well because everyone has their own views of how the country should be run and what would be the best for our nation. So yes, the first thing is true. I wanted to replace the Speaker at the time. And secondly, the Meow Block, that's true to some degree. We're not officially called the Meow Block, but yes, I have gathered a few allies in Congress.
Can you care to name who
It's a
your
secret.
secret ba yun? Okay. Pero may mga nagtatanong kung close kayo ni Congressman Leandro Levisa because you're both very young and ang perception is you're mga brilliant young men in Congress. Are you close friends?
Well, we've met a few times, but we're not really to the point that we can say we're close. But yeah, he's one of the few congressmen that I actually agree with.
So, masasabi mo ba kung member siya ng Meow Block?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Sige, so mystery sa amin yan kung sino yung mga members. But there was also a report back in September 2025 that you admitted plotting a coup against Speaker Bogie D. And you also publicly endorsed si Navota's representative Toby Tiangco to be the Speaker. Totoo ba yung coup attempt na yun? And were you able to gather some support for that to happen?
I mean, like, I plot a coup against the Speaker all the time. So I plot a coup against Romualdez, against Bogie D. The one against Romualdez, that only started after I was betrayed by my party. Before then, I was very silent on the matter. So I was not planning a coup by then. But afterwards, during at least a week before Romualdez resigned, that's when I started the call for investigation to his involvement in the flood control anomalies. That's when I started trying to get support against him.
And kung babalik ka, I mean, you're going back soon, in a few weeks, may isip mo pa rin ba magka-coup plots against Speaker Bogie D?
That depends on the scenario by May. Because it's a very chaotic scenario. Like, if you just look at our public transportation sector, it's practically in chaos right now. And once the public transportation sector if it collapses, then that also goes our education sector because plenty of students also rely on public transportation in order to go to school. Plenty of workers rely on public transportation. So whether or not that will be the case or that the House will have a change of leadership by itself on May, or maybe even though there might be people power already by May, we will still have to wait and see because we don't know how the situation will develop. And this is one of the most rapidly escalating tensions in the Middle East that we've seen recently, and how it affects us, even though we're practically almost halfway across the globe from it, is very impactful.
How would you assess the performance of Speaker Bogie D so far?
Oh, he has no notable achievements, which is surprising for someone who's been Speaker for about 6 months. Like, nothing has changed, and they always have stated their plans to change things, yet nothing's actually forming. We have no change in our economic policies, in our taxation policies. They have an anti-dynasty bill, but Bogie D himself is part of a political dynasty, so it'd be hard for him to lobby for that. So there are multiple aspects of this that can gauge the success of the speakership and Congress. And in those aspects, I can't really say that he's very successful.
Well, since you entertained the thought before of being Speaker, what would you have done differently, especially since we're facing this crisis right now, if you were the Speaker of the House?
I already said what I would have done, not even as a Speaker, but as an actual congressman, and the change that I'm lobbying for, which is the removal of value-added taxation in all fuel products. Because the value-added taxation increases because it's a percentage rate. It's 12%. So, for example, you're paying 50 pesos for gasoline, for a liter of gasoline. Then you're paying 6 pesos there. But if it increases to 100 pesos, you're paying 12 pesos each.
Yeah. Oo. So palaki rin ang palaki yung binabayad namin, and malaki rin nakukolekta ng government. You did file, or you authored a bill that wanted to scrap the imposition of 12% VAT on all goods. What is the
Yes.
status of that? Meron bang nakuhang support from Senate and may movement na ba?
Well, it will possibly bankrupt the government, so I don't think they'll be supporting that.
And under your proposed bill, the adoption of a progressive wealth tax on ultra high net worth individuals was also mentioned there. But now, economist and former NEDA Secretary Winnie Monsud also is proposing something similar to that, like taxing the 50 wealthiest billionaires in the country to help us, have a fund to mitigate the effects of this crisis. Do you agree with that?
Yes, in terms of policy, yes. But in terms of whether or not it would be applicable or whether it would be possible, that's very unlikely because a lot of these top 50 wealthy billionaires, they have people that are close to them. They have people that they are capable of instructing within Congress and within the Senate that would choose not to support that tax, instead allocate the tax to the poor instead. And it's that form of support that they gave to those congressmen during times of election or during their campaigns that would stop them from supporting such a bill, even though it would be to the benefit of the majority of the Filipino people.
Okay. Another event that's going on in the House of Representatives right now is the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte. What can you say about the impeachment process so far, based on your observation on how the House Justice Committee is conducting this?
From my perspective, and that's someone who's not in the House now because I haven't been there for the past almost 4 months, it seems kind of pointless. Because for the impeachment, you only need 1/3 of Congress, right? Getting 106 votes shouldn't be too hard for them. It's harder now than it was last year because we're getting closer to the 2028 elections, and Vice President Duterte is still the front runner, and that's basically said by practically everyone. Even the administration does not deny that Vice President Duterte is very popular, and that voting yes towards the impeachment would be detrimental to their future campaigns. And secondly, is the issue regarding the Senate. It's not 1/3, but they need a 2/3 vote in the Senate in order to pass that. And I don't really see them getting those numbers in the Senate, especially considering that the impeachment is a long process. So after the Senate trial voting would estimate that if they try to rush it as much as possible, and if the situation does not escalate in the Middle East, that would lead to further delays. They might do it by near the end of the year, and by then it will be very, very close to the 2028 elections, and the senators would be cautious in making such a radical notion that they would vote yes to impeaching the highest voted official in Philippine history.
Okay, so you're saying that it's a waste of time just because you don't see the impeachment gathering enough votes in Senate especially.
Yes, because they're not going to risk 5 to 10 million votes in the upcoming elections just in order to give a yes vote for the impeachment.
So Malutikia, political analyst Malutikia said that VP Sara's impeachment should be set aside for now and the government should focus on helping the people cope with the oil crisis. Do you agree with this?
I agree with it in some parts, but at the same time, what exactly can the government do if it does not do the impeachment? I mean, the oil crisis is... The government's already in crisis even before the whole fuel crisis has started. So, focusing on that would not actually, from the administration's point of view, focusing on that would not actually solve anything because they're already out of options. There are plenty of economic issues that existed before the crisis started, and now that it has started and it has begun, and we are already in the middle of the situation, we no longer have the necessary tools in order to combat this. It's like, for example, if you're to... What sports do you do?
Ako, I play pickleball, I scuba dive, scuba diving.
Okay, wala akong alam doon. But for example, chess or boxing. Sige, chess muna. You're down multiple pieces. Your opponent has a large material advantage over you. there are very few options that you have at that point compared to a point where the game is just starting and you are similar in material. Or for example, in boxing, where you're already in the ring against a much more prepared and much stronger opponent, you would have very limited options. And that's what we're seeing now. The government has very limited options because the times where it should be preparing for a crisis, which is in 2025, 2024, 2023, and the start of the administration, it has not done so. There's the Maharlika Investment Fund. It hasn't done anything. There's the selling of our gold reserves. Those were still unexplained. We still don't know what happened with that. And there's the catastrophic 2025 midterm elections. There's the decrease in foreign direct investments due to the massive corruption issues. And all of these are adding up. And it's also limiting the options possible within the government. Because now because of former President Duterte's arrest, they're now facing plenty of internal conflicts as well.
So you're saying that when kulang na options, parang they have no other option but to try to impeach Vice President Sara? Is that your point?
No, it's not related. It's not exactly with the impeachment, but rather what options we can make against the current issues that we're facing in the oil crisis.
That's why you're not equating, like, it's not like pag matanggal yung attention sa impeachment. It's not like we have a lot of options anyway to deal with the oil crisis.
It's not that they can do the impeachment and the fuel crisis at the same time. It's that they have to do the impeachment now because they imprisoned former President Duterte. So now the Duterte administration is an existential threat to the Marcos administration. The possible future of a Duterte administration is an existential threat to the Marcos administration. And they would not have to balance these two things if they didn't cause the imprisonment of former President Duterte. And that led to the loss of the midterm elections, where multiple opposition candidates, 5 of the Duterte candidates, were able to make it within the Senate. So now they are also facing any possible Senate coup attempts. They have to prepare for so many different problems right now instead of being able to focus during the current problem. Like if we compare to former President Duterte's time, where he was capable of fighting against the pandemic because he did not have to deal with catastrophic midterm results or plenty of issues involving the economy a year before the pandemic started. We already had plenty of economic issues before and plenty of large-scale protests. There were hundreds of thousands, possibly even 1 million people marching on the streets last year due to the massive flood control scandals. And we didn't have that before the pandemic time, which is why we were able to handle it.
As an insider, are you aware kung meron bang hold accountable for the flood control scandal? There were a lot of congressmen that were mentioned during the Blue Ribbon Committee hearings, but it's been very quiet. And for us observers, hindi namin alam kung meron bang hold accountable from the House of Representatives.
From my perspective, I wouldn't expect anything, because as we've seen, even with the ICI, we spent millions allocated budget for the ICI, and they have not actually done anything. Like they had hearings, they had investigations, but all of those were closed doors because every congressman was given the opportunity to choose a private investigation instead, and that's what everyone chose. So the ICI was not able to do anything. There's been no results from that, so I don't think anyone's going to be imprisoned for the flood control anomalies. It's very unlikely.
Parang malungkot yan for people who want accountability. But thank you so much, Congressman Kiko.
Thank you.
You're not going away kasi pag-uusapan pa natin sa part 2 of our interview more about your personal life naman. After 2 suspensions and a series of controversies that have kept him in the headlines, Kiko Barzaga now faces a critical turning point, his return to Congress. Today's conversation shows a lawmaker who remains defiant, vocal, and deeply engaged in the issues shaping the country. In part 2 of our interview, we'll get to know Congressman Kiko Barzaga on a more personal level. Be informed, be insightful of the news. I'm Atty. Jimeno. Always stay at the forefront.